Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Dave, and welcome to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. So forget your lazy negativity, people. We try to keep it positive on this show. So anytime you hear this sound, that buzzer means that we said something negative, and therefore we have to take a drink.
We do. So pour yourselves a glass, or in this case, a shot glass. Have you got your shot glass, Jeff? We do a shot at the start of the show just to show everyone how serious it is. So
here we go. And bottoms up.
And that's done. Okay.
That is done.
Cool.
We hope you drink along with us, unless you're behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, if you're listening in the car, possibly on the train, you might get arrested. Maybe right. Don't drink along with us there. That's so cool.
Dave, it's you and I today. Our co-host John has the virus. He's got it, the plague. He's still. It's number 2 of this year, I think. So,
dude,
John,
you can't say that. You violate his hippo rights.
Did I? Oh, fuck! You're right.
No, it's fine. We're not doctors.
You're right. You know what? I think anybody who listens to our show knows we are definitely not doctors.
And nobody even mentioned all the herpes. So we're good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to buzz you, dick. Okay, people. We try to keep it positive here on the Love of Cinema podcast. If you're new to our show, we also try to keep it spoiler-free for the first 10 minutes or so you can get our initial takeaways, what we thought and what we, more importantly, felt about the movie, unlike those stuffy critics that try to explain why things are a certain way rather than actually tells you how they felt sitting in the cinema, seeing this movie. Before we get into it, though, we have to shout out our sponsors. So let's do that very quickly. Our beer sponsor is Carlos Barroso. That's Carlos Barroso is our beer sponsor. You can check out him on Instagram. I believe he has finished his certifications, so he is on to bigger and better things, I think. Check him out in the show notes. And our music is by the artist known as Da Sign, who is now on Spotify. He just released new music for the first time in years. Yeah. He is back, people.
You can find links straight to it on our link tree, actually. It's set out really nicely.
The link tree to find him on Spotify. And, of course, find us on all the socials, subscribe, all that kind of stuff that people beg you to do and you hate. But it really is good for our show. We would love it if you reached out, dropped a line. Dave will respond, as he has proven in the recent past. All right, Dave, we're talking about 3,000 Years of Longing. But before we get into that, we have our gripes of the week. I know you have at least. I actually am going to pass on today's, but I know you have at least one.
I'm only doing one because, like, after the debacle that was last week, when we had Mark on from Matt and Mark Movie Show, and we asked him what his gripe was, and 7 minutes later, we returned to our normal programming. So we've introduced a gripe timer now. It's a 60-second gripe timer that go. And if you're still talking when that winds down to 0, a buzzer goes off and you drink. New rules, people. We got new rules.
New rules. All right, yep. Dave, why don't we do it? Why don't we fire it up, show the people what we're talking about? Are you ready for your gripe?
I am.
All right, hit it.
Okay, so I'm buying my ticket for this film.
Yeah.
And I've gone through the whole process of buying the ticket on the app, like little phone app. It's very, very handy and stuff. And I get to the end, and I buy my ticket, and I hit OK, and a pop-up pops up, and it goes, this purchase qualifies you for this offer. And I'm like, well, no, I don't want a credit card, so I close that. This purchase qualifies you for this offer. 4 fucking times the AMC app tried to get me to buy stuff after I just got a ticket. And it's like, I'm sorry, I paid for A-list. I don't want this shit.
Wait,
I don't want your offers.
You keep going. Do you have any more?
No, that was it. They're trying to upsell me on the end of it.
I'm going to keep going on your gripe. You're right, because I tried to test for the Matt and Mark Movie Show, which I was on. I'll talk about it in a second. This is National Cinema Day or whatever. It's coming up on Saturday, where all movies are $3. And I was trying to prove on the air, I was trying to look it up on the AMC list, and they tried selling me so much shit, I didn't even know where the price of the ticket was, where the purchase was. It pissed me off. Exactly. I'm an A-list member. Why do you need to sell me shit? Ugh.
And we got that out of our system.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Dave, we got to it. We got to cheers. We got to cheers to completion of that.
First successful gripe.
First successful gripe that actually was under a minute.
Yes.
I was on the Matt and Mark Movie Show to talk about Samaritan, which you, John, and John had COVID, but he still had Amazon Prime, so he's going to be on our next episode. He apparently tested negative today. Thanks to the booster. So I was talking to them on the Matt and Mark Movie pod, talking about Samaritan. So a little conflict of interest for our joint subscribers. We'll see if our takes are different. I'm going to try to let you and John do the talking so I don't steal too many of our points from that show.
That's going to be an interesting episode.
And just for fun, because I knew that they were seeing 3,000 Years of Longing today, I'm going to put in their initial reactions at the end of our segment once we get to that momentarily. We'll hear from Matt and Mark. So, Dave, before we talk about 3,000 Years of Longing, George Miller's first film since Mad Max Fury Road in 2015. Anything else before we dive into this here movie?
No, I just want to straight up, like, a warning up front of this movie. If you are looking for Fury Road, wait for the next one. This is nothing like, this is a man who has so many different levels in what he does. Like, you put Mad Max Happy Feet and Mad Max Fury Road in the same, like, director's hands.
So you're Australian. So is George Miller? George Miller's got to be like an iconic figure for you.
Yeah, no, he kind of keeps to himself. No, we love him. We absolutely love him.
All right, for the fake out. What was your first George Miller that you saw in theaters? Did you see OG Mad Max or was it Mad Max 2?
OG Mad Max I saw on VHS.
Okay.
Because we just got VHS players. This was one of those, like, back in the Rambo days and stuff. We got that and Mad Max 2. I remember seeing. I enjoyed Mad Max 2 more. No, I think they were a couple of years apart.
Road Warrior was 81. You're right, and fucking Stallone's
Mad
Max 2 was 81. The Road Warrior was 81, and the fucking Rambo was 82.
Yeah.
That's okay. Cool. What is your favorite?
We didn't get him in Australia till like 84. So
it's hilarious. I think it's okay to start with George Miller because we're going to leave him off to the side for a second. But this is clearly a passion project film. I'm not giving anything away to say that. So
I mean, it's written, produced, directed, executive produced.
So especially since we're a two host a pod today, let's set it up with some George Miller. What is your favorite George Miller?
Hard to tell. It's because they're all so different. You can't have just one favorite, I don't think. Mm-hmm. Like, the Mad Max is the closest we've had to him sticking to a theme.
Yeah.
And I think Mad Max 2 or Fury Road might be my favorite.
Man, I like Fury Road a lot, and
yeah.
I mean, I grew up with the Max like action figures, I think, and so like I had all of that, and I'd seen the films. I think I watched Lorenzo's Oil and like.
How many knives did those action figures come with?
Right. So hilarious. Honestly, that's like when I first learned of like Swiss Army knives, I was like, I think I had the play version of this. And then Lorenzo's Oil, I really feel like I watched, and Witches of Eastwick, I need to revisit as an adult. I think that's another one that I saw.
Oh my god, I forgot he did that.
Yeah, directed.
I love that. I still use some of Jack Nicholson's lines for comedy.
I fucking love Jack too. So I think when I saw it on TV because I saw Jack and Witches, and I was like, I know Jack Nicholson, I know Witches. I think I'm in. And then Babe Pig in the City, I saw it like a one screen cinema in the middle of the Adirondacks, nowhere. And I was a very, very young child, but I remember enjoying that.
And the screen was about the same size as an iPhone 12.
No, the screen was big. It probably just didn't have the it wasn't as picturesque. The drinks haven't hit me yet, so I'm not clearly in my articulation. But
let me help.
Yes. Okay. I think we can now segue into 3,000 Years of Longing. This film premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, although it was not up for competition, and I actually don't know why. I didn't look up why. I
might have been a date thing.
A date thing, maybe.
Yeah, like if it's not submitted by a certain date, or if it wasn't released in a certain time frame, they can't enter that year. But they're still releasing the film, and I can't premiere. Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat a Cannes premiere, especially when you have stars, which Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton are stars.
As long as the French don't walk out, if they walk out, it hasn't gone well.
Not buzzing. That's fucking true. Yeah.
They're not shy about letting you know they didn't like a fucking film. I can tell you that.
Even if it's not up for competition, it can be up for contention. So this is great. This is obviously his first film since Fury Road, and this is definitely a passion project, which we're gonna unravel in a second. It's based on the short story The Djinn. That's Djinn. I've heard a couple podcasts where they just kept saying Djinn. And I was like, guys, is that the British drink? Is it the BTS member? What are you guys talking about? The Djinn and the Nightingale's Eye by A.S. Byatt. This is co-written, the screenplay by George Miller and Augusta Gore, directed by George Miller. This is shot by, we'll talk about, I'm sure, a lot. This is shot by Academy Award winner John Seale, who did Mad Max Fury Road, and The English Patient was his Oscar. And the score is by Tom Holkenborg, Mad Max, and also Dave, Deadpool. $60 million budget. George Miller said thank you to us at the beginning of this movie. He thanked us for coming to the theater.
Yeah.
I didn't think we needed to do that anymore, but George Miller just wanted to
took the edge off Nicole Kidman.
It did take the edge off Nicole. Again, no buzz, you're 100% right. I'm going to shut the fuck up and pass this over to you after I read the brief IMDb description. A lonely scholar, this is Tilda Swinton, a lonely scholar on a trip to Istanbul discovers a djinn who offers her 3 wishes in exchange for his freedom. Dave, why don't you take it away with some spoiler-free initial takes? What did you think?
Wow, that fucking description tells you almost nothing about the shit that goes on in this film.
All right, talk to us.
It's it's almost 2 films mashed together, I would say, in this case. Yeah, there's a very grounded, like, concise, like, small room, that sort of thing. But when they go into the storytelling world, because he begins talking about his story, like what happened to him to get him to this point and get how he got in the bottle, and he tells all these stories to her because she's like, she studies stories for a living. She's absolutely enthralled by it. So when they go into the story world, though, the whole technique of the film changes. So instead of becoming this really concise, contained story in a hotel room with two actors, it turns into this enormous fucking world. And that was cool for me. I want to say it got in my head a little bit because I spent the entire fucking night dreaming about this movie. And my dreaming brain, like, I don't know why, it was just bouncing around in my head the whole night, but my dreaming brain could not outdo some of the visuals they splashed on screen.
Yeah.
Like, there is some fucking colorful, bright, like, some of the visual stuff in this is genius.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's about all it's got. There's some good story, there's a couple of good performances, and it's all slapped together and tied together so loosely. That's its biggest fault.
Okay, so I'm trying to see if you would. Well, you don't have to recommend this to people, but
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
Well,
I walked out of this going, how the fuck do I talk about what I just saw?
I know, this is the problem with having a podcast. You have to share your feelings.
I mean,
about
I can imagine.
See.
I can imagine, like, in the like the color and the visual effects sessions, like, he's just sitting there and he's like, all right, so we're going to crank up the color and crank up these mystical visuals. And I'm like, keep turning that knob up till the people in the screening room have involuntary bowel movements and then take it back a notch, you know? Because it was it was so in your face, and like, it really, really struck you at the time. But it's just a guy telling 3 stories, and it really does falter for me in the third act.
The third act seems to be it's a hiccup for a lot of people. I'm not going to spoil what that is for people who haven't seen it yet, but
yeah.
I did like this movie, although I completely validate exactly what you're saying. So I think
I'm surprised I was sneaky enough to get through that without hitting a single buzz.
No, it was very well said. I think the watcher, the viewer, is definitely a character in this. You know, maybe that's a little lame to say, but there is room for interpretation. And this kind of, I don't know why this reminded me of 2 different movies. One was Men, because it was Men, which you were in Australia, John and I talked about that one, because it's so much about lore, and it's rooted in poetry, not prose, meaning like it's not meant to be taken literally, even though the story seems to be very clear. They set it up very well that, well, I'm going to talk about the setup in a second that Tilda does. And The Adventures of Tintin, which is a kid's movie that Spielberg did in, I think, 2012, but it was the same thing where it was animated, but the stories just came to life, and all of a sudden you were just like, the scenery just turned into this imaginative dreamscape. If anybody's never seen that, I wouldn't be surprised. I saw it because that
didn't do too well either.
No, I saw it in a group. So there were younger kids, and I like seeing movies, and it was friends that had kids, and so we saw it all like as a group. And so that's the only reason that I saw Tintin. But anyway, there's just stylistically that sort of reminded me of this. I didn't mean to be curt about Djinn and the legacies of Djinn. I just didn't know anything about them. Anybody who lives in America, we don't know much about basically Middle Eastern lore that has nothing to do with Christianity or Judaism. They consider this to be pre-Islamic Arabic tales. So this is from like the Age of Solomon and beyond. It's similar to the demons of Greek mythology and yada, yada, yada. And I think my initial takeaway is positive. And I think a lot of it is because, first of all, I love Tilda Swinton. So even though in this movie, her and Idris Elba did have some good chemistry, but she never really had those moments. She never had those like big acting beats. You know, I'm okay with some subtle acting, but she never really got her scenes to like, it couldn't have been done by a lesser person, but so much is just in this relationship and just in her sort of being okay with being alone. There's not a lot of conflict in that, but we'll get back to that part in a second.
Yeah.
I loved it because she's an academic who's also an author. I guess she teaches at the university level, we find out. But she's giving this presentation in Istanbul, and the whole thing is about gods and lore. And I think it's very carefully chosen by George Miller that he mentions Thor and Odin, for instance, in that legacy. And it has so obviously the current religious figures, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. But then it has, the Norse gods, and it has the Greek and Roman and Eastern. Obviously, we always forget and that there are religions that are still alive today that are twice as old as our religions, even though we think ours are so obviously right. They, you know what I mean? That we were the Jehovah's Witnesses 2,000 years ago or whatever. Somebody would buzz the fuck.
I gotta do that.
That's history, folks. We were the new ones at some point. Wait, I mean Western religions. Anyway, so she sets it up so well that we tell stories for a reason. And so for me, like, context is a huge thing in this. So why do we tell the stories? We tell the stories to explain our existence, to justify our consciousness, whatever, what happens when we die, basically to give ourselves purpose and meaning, because without it, what's the point of having consciousness if it doesn't mean anything, right? It's better just to be a deer and just fucking die and not even realize that anything happened, for instance. So then she starts seeing... So then she... Dark. Anyway, so then she sees the figures start to come to life. Her stories and her imagination starts playing tricks with her. And then those figures, I wish they went further with this, but they start appearing in the Djinn stories, which sort of make it seem like it's not even the Djinn stories. Like, we are all retelling and reimagining stories.
I took from that it was a very clever little thing where it's like he's telling the story, she's visualizing the story. Which is why the characters she's seen turn up in this story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that was clever. I like that.
Yeah. So I didn't really finish my point other than to say it's both epic and intimate. And I do think that it was contextualized in such a way that by the time Idris starts telling this story, well, it's sort of, 3 or 4 different stories, but it's one journey, I suppose.
Yeah.
I kind of got swept away in the progression of it and sort of the purpose of it. And I have a lot of sort of maybe poetic ideas or maybe just sort of questions that I want to bounce about. But I still recommend this movie, but I recommend it because of the thoughtfulness of it and the feeling of it, not necessarily because it's a great film. What do you think of that?
I like that. I also had a weird thing where I was like, I looked at them. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and book this for whenever I can fit it in my weekend, because my weekend was quite busy this weekend. And I looked at the thing and I'm like, okay, 140 minutes. And for some reason, my brain translated that as an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, no.
And I went in there and I'm sitting there. I'm like, this ain't no hour and 40 fucking minutes. What's going on here? Like, is this movie boring me?
Oh no, that's tough.
But it wasn't. It was just longer than I thought it was. So I think a little bit of that seeped in. But yeah, we'll talk about the third act when we get to spoilers.
Yeah, I told you guys Matt and Mark would give me their reactions to this. So if you guys know anything about Matt and Mark, they are definitely a long form podcast where they talk about one movie, but they talk about other things, and it's
then
very
they come
open.
on our show and do it to us.
And then they do it to us. They have 7-minute rants. That's funny. Okay, so this is Matt for the Matt and Mark. Yeah, buddy, I think Mark and I are going to be split on this one. I love when they assume things about each other. It's very adorable. I love the visuals. Duh. Mm-hmm. But I didn't connect with the movie the way I wanted to. Full disclosure, I dozed off a few times. I don't know if he was saying full disclosure as in don't read this on the podcast, but sorry. I dozed off a few times. That's not a knock on the movie, mind you. More like an admission on my part. I was tired as shit, and the movie has all the same qualities as a bedtime story, which, you know what? It does.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. He said, I met Idris, fell asleep, then I woke up just in time for the fat people sex dungeon. Wild times.
Which is exactly what you want to see when you first open your eyes.
I actually said, you know what? That turned out pretty well for you.
Yeah.
So that was Matt. And this is Mark Monstrowski. He actually loved it.
Sensitive, but, we're good.
Mark said, I want to watch it again. I also love the use of multiples of threes and triangles in the production design. So beautiful, reminded me of Tarsim's The Fall. What a gorgeous and moving film, definitely not made for the TikTok generation. Also, center framing is the best in my opinion. I also love how the fascination the Djinn had with the humans, sort of like how we would be fascinated with something supernatural.
Center
Very
framing.
cool premise, though. Yeah.
Mark,
anyway.
you apologize to Tom Hooper right now.
You buzz yourself. I can't get my shit up in time. There it is. All right, so that was our friends at the Matt and Mark movie show with their initial takeaways, and I think that's about right. It's gorgeous. It's the visuals are stunning. I think there is a lot of symbolism. This is obviously George Miller. He made Mad Max. That doesn't mean he has to do another Academy Award anything film. That means he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Yeah. This happens all the time. Darren Aronofsky's fucking film Mother. What the fuck was he doing with that movie? You know what I mean? But you know what he.
That is on my
but
should have seen that by now list, actually.
It's not on my rewatch list. I promise you that. I think John and I saw that movie in the theaters, but
you're just punishing yourself.
But these are master filmmakers who make the movie they want to make. So there's clearly something in here that he wanted to make. There's fable, there's some magical elements, there's magical creatures in this film that they don't really talk about. There's like this old lore that could have been real or not. It's just. And also, it was set in the Middle East. It's just not where us Western culture, we don't see a lot of things set there, even though that's where most of our history comes from. I don't know. There was something about it that was very captivating for me.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I found the story compelling. And I don't know why this movie didn't sit right with me, except for the way the third act grated on me a little. And I think because that's the impression I left with. I lost all the I can't really talk much more about it till we go to spoilers, but
all right, we'll go to spoilers right there. I think that's the best we could say. The more we talk about it, the more closer to spoiler it's going to be. But I'm thinking about it a lot. You said you were falling asleep thinking about it.
I dreamt about it for like a whole night.
I feel like Matt is also going to be dreaming about waking up in that that section that he mentioned. But I guess we can send people off. Dave, what do you say?
Yeah.
All right, heading into spoiler sections here. So let's talk the first thing in our spoilers. So the third act largely has to do with Idris Elba's Djinn and Tilda Swinton's character. But let's track their journey the whole way. She sees him in the bathroom. This is in the trailer. For anybody's seen the trailer, he shrinks to a more reasonable size. What did you think about their relationship? Let's just focus on them for a second.
I thought that was quite cute, actually. To be honest, I like the bounce back and forth. I like that she knew more about him than he thought she would, and because of what she did, and that she was not falling for some of the ploys that he might have used. And she at one point she flat out calls him a trickster, and she's like, you realize you're telling me everything you're telling me is a cautionary tale about not making wishes, and you're asking me to make 3 wishes. So it was a nice little back and forth between them, because he was
So I want to pick up, there's 2 things I want to say about that. Number one is this idea of the trickster also apparently comes, I did like a 10-minute Reddit on this, so please don't pretend like I'm an expert, but the difference between demons and Djinn, and some are good and some are bad. So the idea of the Djinn could be a trickster, could be not. It's good. Yeah. It's kind of like this good and evil kind of lives with all of us, even the supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, Djinn could go one of 2 ways. It's like, you're happy, Aladdin style happy, or full on fucking monkey paw.
Did you know that the genie from Aladdin could fuck?
No. I feel like there's something they didn't cover, but there you go.
I had no idea. Okay, but you mentioned something very interesting, which I think is really important. If you're going to appreciate this film, these kinds of things are the things that you might latch on to. You mentioned, what'd you say? You mentioned that the wishes would set him free. She doesn't want to give him the wishes, and then she does, and then he doesn't grant them.
Yeah, kind of. It's like he's trying to get her to make these wishes, and she doesn't want to make the wishes. But then when she starts, as usual, like people get heated and they throw I wish in, and she starts almost making the wrong wishes, and he's literally stopping her from making wishes because of his past, which then leads into that story of why he's reacting like that.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a nice little flow through. I did like the bounce back and forth between that. I found one or two of the stories a tad long.
Sure. Which ones?
The second and third one.
I agree about the second one. Let's talk about the third one. So first of all, the reason that he is in the bottle, the reason he's not just a djinn walking among us, electromagnetic. They try to explain these things a little bit.
Yeah,
whatever.
they do like try and put some science to it.
Yeah, sure. The reason he's in the bottle is because he was obsessed. This is a djinn. He was obsessed with Sheeba, the queen of Sheeba. And she was promised to another man, and then she actually fell for this man. Now, he was a bit of a trickster himself, so perhaps the djinn was trying to protect her, but ultimately, it was selfish. He was doing it for himself.
Yeah,
and
they were in love.
Yes.
Love undoes him almost every time.
So he gets put in the bottle and then lost for thousands of years, comes back, yada, yada. I want to jump to the third story, though, because this is something that's really fascinating to me. So first of all, she's the reader. So she is the young wife. She's the third wife of a very old man on the river in Istanbul, basically. It primarily takes place in Istanbul, in a huge house, but she's locked away up there. And she's basically, I watched the FLDS documentary, you know, that's the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. They have multiple wives. The young wife is the plaything for the old guy with the old wives, right? So like maybe new kids, but it's mostly a plaything, and she knows it, and that sucks. But luckily not luckily, there's nothing lucky about this, but she gets this djinn, and he, rather than do what you see in Aladdin, which is immediately start wishing for things, they fall in love, basically, you know, and it's slowly. She wants knowledge, and rather than him just snap his fingers and her brain, now she's knowledge, she actually has to read and study, and he gives her books. And so we already know we're not in this same magical realm, even though there's magic. But this is this is what I'm getting at.
Disney the Saint.
She is trapped in this marriage and in this room, basically. He is trapped in this bottle. All he has to do to get free is she has to grant 3 wishes, same as the Tilda Swinton thing you just mentioned. She won't do it. But she accuses him of manipulating her to not use all 3 wishes so that they could stay together. And she's right, because he is manipulating her. Yeah. So he doesn't actually really want to be free because he's afraid of freedom, or whatever you want to interpret with that. She desperately wants to be free, but also doesn't grant him his freedom. So they are sort of stuck in this trapped thing forever, which leads me to a line that comes in at some point that I think Idris Elba says, which is basically, there I am, left to my own oblivion, stuck between worlds forever. Is it all too much to ask? And it's like, it's basically like, why do we do this to ourselves over and over and over and over again? Centuries after centuries, story after story. All of the great stories eventually come down to who we love, why we love them, and why is it that we spend so much of our life stressing over things that both put us in boxes, but we would also die without them. And I think that left me with enough to justify the entire film, even though you're right, the third act was kind of boring. What do you think about that?
When he got pulled in that bottle the second time, I had an image of him just sitting there on the like puffy cushions, like, how could the same thing happen to the same guy twice?
Yeah.
I went full Die Hard too. But no, it was I agree. It was those sort of through lines and that subtlety that it made the situation intriguing in itself, because some of that stuff you don't realize while you're sitting there watching it. You think about it later and you're like, it's like when it first rubbed me wrong when we went into the first story and the guy from Tilda Swinton's vision is standing there in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, what the fuck's going on with that guy? Like, because he was terrifying when he came at her in the lecture. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on with this guy? Like, is this going to turn into a fucking horror show? And no, it was just placed there because it was her perspective that was basically illustrating this story. And I didn't realize that until about 3 hours later. Like what was going on with that guy. And I was like, that is really cool.
Now that we know that the djinn, can kind of call on people, do you think that was him calling on her? Or do you think it was just, like the stories blended very interestingly?
Yeah. I mean, you know she may well have been like the Sultan that she could sense him.
Mm-hmm.
because literally got led to the bottle down the streets. Like they went through the whole thing, like through the streets. There were like 65 something shops, or 65 streets, 3,000 stores, and this thing was in a back room in one store, and she went right to it.
Interesting, right?
So yeah, she was being guided. Yeah, she could sense him. Like she had something in common with each one of these people, and I just realized what the one with the guy was, that she could actually sense him. That's
sort of my next question: is not reincarnation, but is this actually the same story? You know what I mean? And just told in different times. Because another theme in this is science and technology versus nature and humanity. The Djinn becomes human, but he's also electromagnetic. And then you have the whole technological advancement, which he sort of supersedes, right? Because he can pull Albert Einstein out of the TV. He can put him back in. Like, he kind of goes in between technological advancements and such. So is she... I was surprised that in the final moment, we didn't get some more play on technology. She's writing on paper, and then you see Idris Elba at the very end, and they both seem very human. So that was something that kind of caught me. But there's something about the science and the technology in this that they introduced that I think they could have really used in the third act, rather than just the solemnity of the two of them being isolated.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like I said, with the third act, that's where I think it went off the rails. Because they decided to come back to London, they put themselves in another small room, but the stories are done at this point pretty much. It's not like you meet the two racist old neighbors who I'm pretty sure he was taking a shot at them over Brexit for that. I was like, what the hell's with these two racist old ladies that are suddenly introduced in the third act? Like, that was clumsy as fuck. And then as I was writing that note, I'm saying that like they could have cut this out. It served no purpose. I realized that it plays nicely on the line they've been walking the whole way through, which is this happening to her, or has she had a fucking mental break and she's talking to an empty room?
That's exactly right.
And they resolve that.
Yeah.
Like once and for all, finally, because it's the first time anyone else in the movie acknowledges him.
Yeah, which is again, what is going on? Who is he? Is he real? Like, oh my god, it's just it gets
like they set it up beautifully. They established from the first 5 minutes that she's fucking seeing things.
Well, also she passed out, so this could be a full Donnie Darko. Like she could be in she could be in a coma because she passed out in the opening scene, and then when she woke up, they did only a really great filmmaker with a $60 million budget and masters who have worked with him before could pull off that when she awakens, and you don't know if is she in the room, is she in the audience, is she in a hospital, is she in an ambulance? They really do that reveal really well.
Yeah.
But back to the two old ladies, they kind of seem like a caricature. They seem like the Coraline ants or whatever. Like they were so caricature-y in a creepy way.
That was kind of what rubbed me the wrong way about that insert. Like I feel like they could have played that down a little, but it was just that was right in your face. Yeah, racist and inappropriate.
Fuck yeah, I acknowledge that for sure. One thing that I would like to acknowledge too is the Djinn being stuck, and then the flaking and all that kind of stuff. A million different ways to interpret it. Another thing that leaves me is, this actor's kind of boring, but at the same time, she's alone, and maybe she's just making up stories to help her pass the time. Because what's the point?
But he's hanging out in the hotel room. Like, do they not have Wi-Fi and fucking 5G in Istanbul?
Oh, come on, it was like 3 hours they were in that hotel room. I think that's. I don't think the time passed. Do they not have? Yeah, she didn't sign up for the get it. But this could have been another situation where she trapped the Djinn. She trapped him in the house. He can't leave, and she carries him in a fucking salt shaker. That was kind of weird with the electromagnetism, but whatever. When she goes through security at the airport,
I like that.
I mean, it was gripping because I was like, did she just kill this thing in a salt shaker?
Yeah.
I love when they're looking at it and they're like, why does she care so much about this salt shaker? Like, pretty fun. But he's flaking and he's in the basement because she's trapping him. And I wonder if she catches on that that's exactly what the third story was. Ugh, man, it's gripping.
I mean, that's the thing. It was, like I said, anyone who likes to hear a good story will probably love this. Yeah, I'm not faulting it. I'm not going to watch it again. But I'm glad I saw it.
Same.
Like it was beautiful.
And the second story was the most like not glamorous, but it was the most complex, and also it was the one that I think about the least in hindsight, even though it did have the weird brothers with the weird orgy.
They were not afraid to get ugly.
The forced orgy. Yeah. Oh yeah. Really ballsy, for better or worse. And good story. I love him trying to lure people to open the stone and stuff. It's all good, but I still can't wrap my head around the second story. I'm not surprised that's where Matt just dozed off and he woke back up again. Anything else you have to say about this? I mean,
I don't think so. I think, I think that was it.
Yeah, I think so too. This is definitely one that's going to get you to think. People, if you saw this movie and you agree, disagree, if anything sparks hatred in you or something that you connected with, please reach out to us on the socials. We would love to respond to you. And if you haven't seen this and you listen through the spoilers, I think you should go see it. It'll definitely make you think. It'll probably make you feel. And it'll also give you some weird dreams.
Yes, it will.
All right, well...
Did you just gush yourself?
You know what? I still haven't figured out this stream deck here. I was going to do this. No, you turned off the fuck you, John screen. I was going to say, fuck you, John. That sound means it's time for our final segment.
It's not in this scene, sorry.
Sorry. All right, people. Well, it is time for our final segment, What You've Been Watching, where we recommend things we have been watching. Dave, what you been watching?
I mean, I've been watching what everyone else has been watching, House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
And I'm also doing Star Wars: The Bad Batch at the moment, the latest animated series that they're doing, which starts right at about when they killed General Grievous in the Clone Wars movies.
Oh, cool.
It literally starts right on Order 66.
Nice.
House of the Dragon. Did you see this thing this week? And this was going to be one of my gripes, but it's not really a gripe because some people are kind of right. Where they were like, that episode should have had a trigger warning. Have you seen this episode?
I haven't seen it, and I'm really upset with myself that I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, basically, it's not. I mean, let's face it. Let's give out a trigger warning because there is a scene in this where the Queen is giving birth, and it's a male.
That was 2 weeks ago. That was last
2 weeks ago. This is what this gripe is from.
Oh, sorry.
What caused the problem with this episode? Okay. Basically, the king decides that we've got to save the heir because it's a breech birth, and he basically tells them to give her a cesarean, which, in that time would kill her. And they don't pull any punches, and they really go to town on it. And I mean, a lot of people are saying it should have had a trigger warning. Now, I get that if you've gone through like a traumatic birth, that sort of thing, absolutely that trigger warning would have been there, or should have been there for anyone who has obviously would be triggered by that because that's absolutely fucking traumatic.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's like it's Game of Thrones. We kind of know what we're in for, and I think the first ones to break this were conservative websites. And I was like, hang on a minute, isn't that what we were going for?
I'm like,
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to watch it.
Oh my God, Dave, that was really clever. That was really well said. That's great. Yeah. Fuck yeah.
I'm so glad that's at the end of the episode. People on YouTube might not make it this far.
No, fuck it. They got to hear it. That's bullshit, people. This is the shit that's this is maybe not breech birth, which we have ways of handling now in cesarean sections, but there are things that have similar consequences if science can't do science. And shit, that's funny. I thought we were just going to be talking about the gripes in Game of Thrones and basically Twitter. Just anytime there's controversy about something that is popular,
they love the pylon.
They're going to boost it. I mean,
they love the pylon.
But that's really well said, Dave. I have nothing to say about that. I want to gush you for how my feelings and thoughts about you bringing that up.
What did you watch?
Well, I'm trying to think because we're doing Samaritan after this, and I don't want to recommend the same thing twice. So I'm one episode behind in House of Dragons because Chloe and I'm so close to being done with The Staircase. I thought I would sneak it in right before this episode. I'm like 30 minutes from the end. So, sorry. I watched the Netflix documentary, The Staircase, 2018 or 19, I think. It's an incredible story about a woman who died at the bottom of a staircase, and the husband was the only one home. There was so much blood. They naturally think he did it, but there's a lot of holes in the story, and there's no murder weapon, and the motive is back and forth. And anyway, it's one of these stories. I'll put it this way. I'm watching the HBO show now, and I'm watching it with Chloe. It's fucking slow, as we've talked about on this podcast last week. We've now watched 7.5 out of the 8 episodes. I think he didn't do it. I think he's innocent. Chloe thinks he did it. And we've been watching the show together. That's how good this. That's
what
how
did you miss?
So
it's funny that you should mention that, because that literally happened today in Australia. There was a guy convicted for killing his wife 40 years ago. This investigation's been ongoing for 40 years, and they tracked it down to like apparently 4 lies that he told during the process. And they're like, well, this kind of points to you doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think he was charged today.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So this is probably the opposite. I won't spoil too much. I'll just say this will be the pitch. It's Colin Firth. Michael Stuhlbarg plays his lawyer, and he's incredible. I think the Emmy nominations are just Colin Firth and Toni Collette. I would not be surprised if they both won. But it's also the show. It's not getting a lot of love, probably because it's fucking slow, and everything's going to go to Succession again, of course. But Toni Collette plays the woman who dies, and they do flashbacks, which is part of the reason it's slow. Sometimes they go back in time, and I'm like, can we just get to the trial? Like, can we please get to the trial? I want to know what happened. But it's worth it because she reenacts multiple scenarios of how it could happen. And I don't mean reenacts. I mean, like, it's as if it happens, like we're seeing alternate accounts of this night. And I'll remind you, she died at the bottom of the stairs, and it's very bloody. And Toni Collette, one of the greatest actresses on the planet, certainly in gore and horror genre, if you've seen Hereditary or any of her other horror films that she's been a part of, there's just the scream in Hereditary alone should get you to watch this show.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps there just when you mentioned it.
You see her.
That was fucking horrifying.
Dying, passing out, waking up, coughing blood. Like, it's gruesome, it's graphic, but it's her, and it's shot so well that it's worth the whole 8 hours watching her reenact these scenes. Not just because you like seeing gory things, but also because it makes you go, well, that could have happened. That could have definitely happened. Like, they really, like in the trials where they reenact different scenarios. This is things that happens in these kinds of trials. The OJ murder, they reenacted different scenarios. All 3 of these scenarios that I've seen could definitely have happened based on Toni Collette's performance. That's my pitch for The Staircase. All right. Cool. Dave, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Everybody who listens to Dave and I talk about 3,000 years of longing. Dave, anything you want to tell the people before we go?
Nope.
Great. See you next time, film fans.